They whispered your name, not in reverence, but in ridicule. They didn't see the sacred thread woven through your pain. They didn't recognize the weight you were carrying in silence. To them, your quiet was weakness, your absence was failure, and your stillness was defeat. But here you are, still rising, still glowing, still chosen. You were never meant to blend in. You were sculpted in shadow, refined in silence, and now you move with a light they can't quite name but deeply fear. There's something about your presence that unsettles the ones who once dismissed you. They feel it, that you've stepped into something deeper, something unseen, something divine that doesn't need to shout to be heard. They laughed when you cried, they clapped when you broke, they felt taller when you were low, mistaking your valley for your ending. But now the same mouths that mocked you can't stop speaking your name, only this time it's different. This time it's through gritted teeth, because every rumor they started has become a monument to your resilience. Every lie they spoke now echoes as truth reversed. They're not laughing anymore, because the spotlight that once made you a target has now made you untouchable. The gossip turned golden, the silence turned sacred, and it's burning them inside to know you made it through the fire, not just alive, but radiant. You were never the villain in their story, but your strength threatened their illusion. They needed you to stay small so they could feel big. But chosen ones don't shrink, they expand, they evolve. And the moment you stopped explaining yourself was the moment your energy became undeniable. They feel it now, not just in words, but in spirit, the quiet force of a soul that's endured too much to ever go back. You didn't become bitter, you became wise, and now they can't unsee it. The glow, the grace, the truth they tried to bury now dances in the open, unashamed, unafraid, and absolutely unforgettable. They saw your stillness and mistook it for weakness. They looked at your quiet seasons and assumed you had nothing to offer. What they didn't know was that stillness isn't absence, it's preparation. The ones who are truly anointed never rush their rise. You weren't stuck, love. You were being stationed. The silence around you wasn't neglect. It was divine strategy. While they were chasing validation, you were being molded in the dark, strengthened by unseen hands, stretched beyond comfort so that when your time came, you would not crumble under the weight of your calling. You weren't inactive, you were in sacred training. Hidden, not to be missed, but to be magnified. You were being made into something that could not be ignored. It hurt, didn't it? To be the one who always gave, yet felt forgotten. To pour out your heart, only to be met with absence. The worst part wasn't the loneliness. It was the feeling that no one truly saw you. That your worth was invisible to the world that only celebrated noise and performance. But chosen ones often walk alone because their path is not meant to be crowded. You weren't forgotten. You were being prepared in private for something public. They overlooked you because their eyes couldn't handle the light you hadn't yet revealed. They judged your pause, not realizing it was the sacred breath before the breakthrough. The world saw inactivity, but the spirit world knew you were being fortified. They assumed you were lost while you were being aligned. They spoke on your name as if your story had ended, but all along the roots were growing deeper. You weren't behind, you were being positioned. The delay was not denial, it was the divine blueprint making room for something greater than they could imagine. Because what's built slowly lasts longer, what's refined in the shadows shines brighter, and the ones who are chosen are always the ones the world underestimates the most. Let them think you were broken, let them believe you were done. Because when a soul like yours emerges from silence, it never returns the same. And when the rise begins, no one can look away. Suddenly you're glowing, and it's not luck, it's alignment. It's not a coincidence that doors are opening, that your name is rising in rooms you've never stepped into. It's not chance that your peace has become power, your silence has become strength, and your presence now carries weight that can't be measured in words. Something has shifted. The same people who once looked past you are now looking at you, and they can't look away. They sense it, even if they don't understand it. That magnetic pull, that unshakable calm, that quiet authority that says, I've been through things I'll never speak of, and yet I still stand whole. They talk because they can't ignore you anymore. You walked through the fire and didn't smell like smoke. You bled in silence, cried behind closed doors, and rebuilt your spirit in secret. Now they see you smiling with a glow they didn't think you'd ever wear. It terrifies them. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you finally started doing something right. You stopped explaining. You stopped apologizing for evolving. You started aligning with what was always meant for you, and it disrupted everything they thought they knew about you. Now your peace is a threat, your presence is a mirror, and the reflection they see, it exposes everything they've been avoiding in themselves. This is where spiritual envy creeps in. The ones who doubted you now secretly admire you. They replay your journey in their minds, trying to understand how you kept going when it all should have broken you. They didn't expect you to rise. They didn't prepare for your radiance, and now they're stuck, watching you flourish in the same soil they swore would bury you. They pretend not to see it, but their energy betrays them. Their words are wrapped in backhanded compliments and passive questions that reveal their curiosity, because deep down, they wish they had your strength, your grace, your ability to turn pain into power and loss into legacy. They can't stand it, because your growth exposes everything they've tried to ignore in themselves. Your evolution isn't just a victory for you, it's a confrontation for them. Every step you've taken forward has become a silent spotlight on their stagnancy. It's not that you did anything to them, it's that you became something they told themselves wasn't possible. You didn't retaliate. You didn't gossip back. That silence, that grace, it screamed louder than any revenge ever could. While they were busy throwing shade, you were planting roots. While they were speaking your name with bitterness, you were reclaiming it with power. And now, your rise feels personal to them, not because you aimed at them, but because your light exposed their shadows. Your presence reminds them of the work they haven't done, the healing they avoided, the dreams they gave up on. You are living proof that survival isn't enough. You can thrive too. And that truth stings for the ones who chose comfort over courage. It's easier for them to laugh at you than it is to face their own reflection. But make no mistake, the laughter is hollow now. It's nervous, it's uncertain, because something in them knows they can't diminish what's divine. They feel your energy before you speak. They sense your strength before you act. That kind of power, quiet, sacred, earned, doesn't need a microphone. It just is. And it rattles the ones who've built their identity on being louder, not deeper. The energy around chosen ones is magnetic, not because they demand attention, but because their presence awakens something ancient in others, something that's been dormant, denied, or dismissed. You walk into a room and the atmosphere shifts, not because you need to be seen, but because the truth inside you refuses to be hidden. And those who haven't faced their own shadow, they feel threatened, not because you're harmful, but because you're honest. You're whole. You're healed in ways they haven't even begun to understand. That's why they can't stand it. You are a walking mirror, and not everyone is ready for the reflection. The truth always finds its voice, and when it does, it echoes louder than every lie ever whispered in your absence. The same mouths that once twisted your name in mockery now speak it with hesitation, maybe even reverence. You see, sacred things don't need defending. Your light defended itself. Your journey, your healing, your quiet perseverance became the story they couldn't silence. They said you'd fail, but now they whisper about your wins. They speak in hushed tones not because they're disinterested, but because they're captivated. Your mockery has turned into curiosity. And it's too late to deny your glow, too late to pretend they didn't notice the way you rose from what was meant to ruin you. They thought you'd crumble, and instead you became a cathedral. They expected your silence to be shame, not knowing it was sanctuary. And now they're watching, closely, quietly, some with envy, some with awe, but all with the awareness that you were never who they claimed you were. You were always becoming, always growing, always holding the weight of a purpose that couldn't be explained to people who hadn't yet met there. The same people who once laughed are now learning from your example. They're dissecting your path, trying to trace the blueprint of your becoming. But your glow? It wasn't built through strategy. It was forged through surrender. And that's something no gossip can replicate. It's beautiful, really, the way life flips the narrative, how the very voices that once tried to tear you down now speak of you with wonder. Not openly, of course, that would cost them too much pride, but in the quiet corners, in the places where truth lives without filters, your name is rising, and not for scandal, but for strength, not for failure, but for fortitude. You've become the story they retell when they need to believe in something bigger than themselves. They don't have to like you. They don't even have to support you. But they see you now, and that, beloved, is the most sacred gossip of all. You never needed to prove anything. Your rise was the proof. The very existence of your joy, your healing, your peace, it speaks louder than any defense ever could. You didn't chase validation. You didn't beg to be understood. You simply kept walking, step by sacred step, while the universe rearranged itself in your favor. Spiritual forces were always working in the background, orchestrating moments, aligning energies, shifting timelines, so that everything they said you couldn't be, you became without apology. You don't need to clear your name. Time does that. Energy does that. Truth doesn't shout. It settles. And when it does, it builds a life that cannot be undone by rumor or ridicule. The table was prepared, the feast is yours, and those who laughed, they now sit in the audience, watching the beauty of your becoming. They watch in silence because there are no words left to twist, no stories left to spin. All that's left is your radiance. All that remains is the evidence of a life touched by something greater than explanation. They see it in your posture, in your peace, in the way you walk without bitterness. Your grace confuses them. Your joy disarms them. Because this kind of glow can't be faked. It's the aftermath of endurance. It's the reward for walking through the fire and still choosing softness. Vindication doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with stillness, with knowing, with the quiet realization that everything you lost was making room for what was never meant to be shaken. You didn't have to shout your worth. You didn't have to clap back. Your alignment spoke. Your evolution shouted. And now, the same energy that tried to delay you is bowing to the timing that crowned you. You rose without rage. You healed without hype. And that is cosmic vindication. When the soul is seen, when the story is sacred, and when the silence you once sat in becomes the song that others can't stop humming.